The classroom was filled with the quiet scratching of pencils, the rustle of papers, and the heavy silence that always came with exams. Among the rows of students sat Daniel, a boy of 16 with eyes fixed not on the paper in front of him, but on the small folded slip he had hidden inside his sleeve. His heart pounded against his chest, louder than the clock ticking at the front of the room. He told himself it was only this once, only because he had to. The night before, Daniel had sat at his desk staring at the open textbook, the words blurring into a shapeless mass. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't concentrate. Fear weighed on him, fear of failing, fear of disappointing his parents, fear of being labeled as incapable. That fear had pushed him into writing down the formulas on a piece of paper, convincing himself that it was just a safety net. But now, as he sat in the exam hall, the weight of that small piece of paper felt heavier than the entire room. Every glance at it tightened the knot in his chest. He copied an answer, then another, each word feeling less like victory and more like betrayal. He avoided the teacher's gaze, afraid those sharp eyes might pierce right through him. The classroom suddenly felt smaller, suffocating, as though honesty itself was pressing against the walls, waiting for him to give in. When the exam ended, Daniel should have felt relief, but instead he walked out of the room with a hollow pit inside him. His classmates laughed and chatted around him, some complaining about how difficult the test was, others confident they had done well. Daniel forced a smile, but inside, guilt clawed at him. He couldn't shake the thought that every laugh he heard, every word spoken widened the gap between who he was pretending to be and who he truly was. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. The grade he might earn no longer mattered. The real problem was the shadow that followed him, whispering that he had cheated, that he had betrayed not only his teacher but himself. Each thought weighed on him like a stone pressing deeper into his chest. The truth, he realized, would never leave him alone. The next morning, Daniel walked into school, carrying the same heavy burden he had taken home the day before. The halls felt longer, the voices of other students sharper, and every step seemed to echo with the memory of what he had done. He had tried to convince himself to stay quiet, to let it pass. After all, no one had caught him, but the more he told himself this, the more hollow the words became. By the time he reached the classroom, his chest ached with the weight of guilt. He sat at his desk, pretending to listen, but every word from the teacher seemed to blur into a single message that his conscience was screaming, "Tell the truth." His hands trembled slightly, and his throat tightened. He knew he couldn't carry this secret any longer. When the bell rang and his classmates rushed out, Daniel stayed behind. The teacher, a middle-aged man with calm but piercing eyes, looked up from his desk. Daniel's voice wavered as he spoke, barely above a whisper at first, then clearer as he forced the words out. He admitted everything. He had cheated. He had written the answers on a slip of paper, and he knew it was wrong. For a long moment, the teacher didn't speak. The silence was heavier than any scolding could have been. Finally, the teacher sighed and leaned back, studying Daniel not with anger, but with something deeper. He told Daniel that there would be consequences. His exam would be voided, and his parents would be informed. The punishment was certain, but it was not delivered with cruelty. Still, Daniel felt the sting of shame more than the fear of punishment. Walking out of that classroom, he felt the eyes of his peers on him, though no one had actually seen the confession. It was his own mind painting those pictures, imagining their whispers. That night, he sat at the dinner table with his parents, their disappointment clear, their silence cutting deeper than raised voices ever could. The days that followed were not easy. Classmates noticed his sudden quietness, some curious, some indifferent. The respect he thought he had was replaced in his mind with an invisible mark of shame. And yet, beneath the weight of consequences, something inside him felt lighter. For the first time since the exam, Daniel could look in the mirror and see not just his failure, but the faint spark of courage it took to tell the truth. Weeks passed, and Daniel carried on with his school days under the quiet shadow of what had happened. The punishment was real, his exam score voided, his parents' disappointment still hanging in the air, but the weight of guilt was no longer crushing him. What remained was something unexpected, something that grew silently like a seed planted deep within him. One afternoon, after class had ended, the teacher asked Daniel to stay behind. His heart tightened, wondering if more reprimands awaited him. Instead, the teacher spoke with a calm voice, telling him that while his mistake had been serious, his honesty had shown a rare strength. Most students, he said, would have kept their secret buried, carrying it until it consumed them. Daniel had chosen the harder path, the path of truth. For the first time since his confession, Daniel felt a flicker of pride. It wasn't pride in his grades, which were now far from perfect, but pride in knowing he had faced his mistake. The teacher told him that trust, once earned through honesty, was far more valuable than any grade could ever be. It was something that would follow him for the rest of his life, a foundation upon which real character was built. The words sank deep into Daniel's heart. He realized then that respect was not given to those who appeared flawless, but to those who had the courage to be real, to own their truth even when it cost them. As he left the classroom that day, he felt a strange kind of freedom. His classmates still saw him as the quiet boy. Some still wondered why his grade had disappeared, but within himself, Daniel knew he had gained something greater than their approval. That night, he sat by the window, the evening sky painted in soft shades of gold and blue. For the first time in weeks, he breathed icily. The stars would come soon, shining above like small reminders that light always finds a way through darkness. He thought about how easy it would have been to remain silent, to keep the lie hidden. But then he would never have known this feeling, the quiet strength that honesty brings. Daniel understood now that life wasn't about perfect marks or flawless success. It was about building trust, about living in a way that allowed you to look at yourself without regret. And in that quiet reflection, he discovered that honesty was not just a choice, but a gift he had given himself. Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry are not the punishments we receive, but the secrets we try to hide. Daniel's story reminds us that honesty may seem costly in the moment, but it is the only path that leaves our hearts unchained. Trust is not built in silence or perfection, but in the courage to face our own mistakes. May we all remember that truth, though difficult, is the seed of respect that lasts a lifetime. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more inspiring tales.